Welcome everyone to the Jewish Law Symposium. It's great to have everyone here. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to move along and cover it rather quickly. A gentleman, a friend of mine, took his grandfather to see Fiddler on the Roof in the 1960s. His grandfather came from a small shtetl back in Europe in the old country, and his grandfather, an elderly Jewish man, sat through the show with Zero Maistel. And on the way out of the show, they turned to him and said, Zayda, so what do you think? He said, that's how it was. That's how it was. That's how real life was. Who here, by raise of hands, had a chance to see Fiddler in Yiddish? Raise your hands. Okay. So on one hand, habe ich getracht zu sich, als es wollte werden kedai, als ich so reden heint bei Nacht nur in Yiddish. But on the other hand, I realized that, Chris Perino, some of the other members here, Yiddish may not be your strong point yet, though I thought if you're thinking of jumping back into a government, the Israeli government right now could kind of use a little help, and Yiddish may come in handy. Just something to think about as we move forward. We want to introduce our distinguished panelists. We have Chris Perino, who is the chair of the litigation department at Lowenstein, past Attorney General of our state, Barbara Bird-Wecker, Justice Wecker, from the Superior Court Appellate Division. So wonderful to have you here on our panel. Larry Lusberg from Gibbons, a noted civil rights attorney, very prominent panel, and Rabbi Yitzhak Adlerstein, who in addition to being a well-known Talmudic scholar, is the director, of Interfaith Affairs at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, dealing with persecution, discrimination, and all of these matters. So we look forward to a fascinating panel. Tradition. So let's talk a little bit, just as Albin spoke about changing traditions on the broader scale of courts and law and justice. Let's get into firms a little bit and to some of the changing traditions that have taken place over the past few years, over the past few decades within law firms. And I'd like to begin with you, Larry. Tell us a little bit of what you've observed of how traditions within law firms have changed over the course of the past couple of years.
Yeah, so it's still funny to me that I'm asked about the last couple of years, as if I've been around a while, but I am definitely getting older and can talk about traditions. So at the end of the part, the clip that you've just seen, Tevye says, traditions. Without our traditions, our lives would be as shaky as a fiddler on the roof. And I think our traditions in the law have been shaky over the 35 years that I've been practicing law. And it's important that they be shaky, because it's important that we all understand that it's very delicate what we do. On the one hand, we love the professionalism of being lawyers. We love calling ourselves lawyers and doing the things that we do. But we have to, as Justice Albin really said, question those things and wonder every single day whether it's right. So is it right that we should all work till 9 o'clock every night and kill ourselves the way lawyers traditionally did? Is it right that after that we all go out to dinners and events like this with other lawyers? Or is the tradition breaking down in a good way, in the sense that people are trying hard to balance life, work life with family? These things are hard for those of us who have been around for a while to see that things really are different. In some ways, it's innocuous, right? I mean, citation form isn't what it was. And in some ways, it's actually really bad. I mean, the tradition was, when I started practicing law, and for a lot of people here, August was, you pretty much had it off, right? I mean, August was a vacation month. Now we all work through August, and even when we go on vacation, we have our cell phones, and we're kind of working and doing emails anyway. But the balance of the way it was, which is good, and rescuing and remembering that which is good, while welcoming that which might even be better, is the hard part. We always have to remember, though, that as we do it, we're fiddlers on the roof. That if we slip, as Tevye says, we might break our neck. And we can break our neck by not be welcoming to the next generation of lawyers who want to do things differently for good reason. And we might break our neck by not adhering to the traditions that make being a lawyer really, really special. So to me, what Fiddler on the Roof stands for is the battle to be open to change. Barry talked about, Justice Albin, talked about so when I first met Justice Alban, he was just Barry. He was just a defense lawyer like me.
Was he an associate?
I think he might have been a paralegal, I think. So I think that, so to me, the tradition of law firms is a great thing. I work at a law firm that is full of traditions. We have, one of our traditions is we have this amazing St. Patrick's Day celebration, and bagpipers walk around Gibbons, and play, but over time I've noticed that people close their doors because they get annoyed at the bagpipers, and that's okay, because it's okay to have the diversity that really engenders. I think that tradition is important to have, and it's important to welcome breaking it down. And that's kind of in all of our lives, but it's part of being a lawyer too.
Chris, jump in over here. Give us a little bit of a different perspective. Your firm's been around a long time. While you're a prominent partner, you're from the newer generation at your firm. Give us your perspective of the traditions within a firm, the changing traditions, and the newer generations, the younger partners who are coming in and shaking things up a little bit.
Let me just start by thanking Justice Alban for his incredible service. I mean, really just amazing. 17 years of commitment to what's important. And I'll just point out that you didn't really seem as funny, as musical, or whimsical when I was appearing before you as Christie's Attorney General. You stuck to your guns. Just today, we had a program for the entire litigation department, to which we invited other interested lawyers and staff to talk about something that I think has not been a tradition in law firms generally, which is to talk about why people leave. Why people leave the law, why people leave law firms. In our case, we have a strange phenomenon where we've had over the years, the last 15 years, 40 people leave and come back. And we had an open dialogue today with 100 people in the room about why people decided that they should leave. And I think it's not something that lawyers like to talk about. They don't want to talk publicly. You don't want to tell your partner that you're thinking about going to do something else, going to work in government maybe, going to work in-house, going to another law firm. And what we've tried to do is sort of break down that tradition and encourage people to come forward and talk to us about what they really want to do. Not everybody wants to be a partner in a law firm anymore. That when I came up the ranks, that was it. You would never dare say that you wanted to do something other than be a partner in the law firm you were working at. That's not what everybody wants to do. And so we are, just happens to be today, trying to break that tradition and open people's minds to having a conversation where, we might actually be able to help you. Even go to a different law firm if that's what you want to do. When a partner of mine who's here, Michael Himmel, and I left a law firm a long time ago, a lot of years ago, it's very different then than it is when you leave a law firm now. You leave Lowenstein Sandler today, we throw you a party. And then we invite you back to alumni dinners. So that's just a snippet from today's events.
Judge Wecker, jump in over here. Give us some of the changing traditions you've observed over the bench for judges and how those traditions have kind of shifted over time.
Probably fewer changes in the traditions in our bench in New Jersey. But what strikes me as I think back, in the days when New Jersey had enough money in the budget to send judges out of state for continuing education, we got to meet judges from other states with other traditions. And it came as something of a shock in one of the sessions to discover that one of the judges from Texas had his pistol in his breeches. Tradition has two sides. There's a lot that's romantic and good sounding about tradition, but another word for tradition could be inertia. And to the extent that tradition has kept us from some changes that would be welcome, It's not always such a good thing.
Thank you. Now, Rabbi, help us out over here, because we're talking about tradition, and we're kind of lumping in, and there have been some critics, I didn't end up including it in the paper, some critics of Tevye who come along and say that Tevye seems a little confused because all of his ritual and all of his practices and all of his commandments, so to say, are all lumped into the word tradition. From the Jewish law perspective, in traditional Jewish life, is there a difference between law and tradition? How would you break down Jewish law and Jewish tradition? What changes and what doesn't?
To put it briefly, it's not a kind thing to say, but Tevye was wrong. He was wrong. Without tradition, we would have survived. And we did survive without tradition because we had something that was stronger than tradition. When Tevye and his wife set off on that journey to America, what they wound up with was a generation or two later, people who would look back at Anatevka and they would find their past, but not their present, and certainly not their future. Traditions are plastic, malleable, sometimes Teflon. There's a German proverb that he who is married to the spirit of the times will quickly find himself a widow. Traditions can change and should change, but there is more than tradition. And I don't think I have to invite people in this room who practice the law. The law goes well beyond tradition. Not all law, because many laws can be changed, should be changed. I thank Justice Albin for a magisterial presentation on what it takes for a society to change some traditions. But there's a tradition of the specialness of human beings. I think a lot of Justice Albin's passion when he delivered that stems from what some people today are saying is a tradition that should change. Thinking that there is something exceptional about the human state is speciesism, and we've got to wipe it out. Other people are arguing that the next form of human evolution is shifting to silicon, because it'll do a far better job on less energy. We're sitting here, to a large extent, you don't have to listen to this, and all that, but we're sharing the largesse of not only of Rabbi Lubin, but of Chabad worldwide. But there is no question that Jews and non-Jews around the world stand in awe of what an army of people devoted to the Jewish people and humanity do at great personal sacrifice. There's no such tradition within Chabad. There is something stronger than tradition, and that is a faith in some things that are held to be immutable. Tradition is important, but if we spend too much time talking about tradition, we lose sight of the fact that not everything can change. The Supreme Court will not overthrow the law of gravity, no matter how many people clamor for it. There are things, perhaps even in human psychology and in the way civilizations have to hold together, that go beyond. That's where I think we find law. Jewish law distinguished itself in a number of ways. And I'm going to be very careful not to get to the 12-minute mark because I don't want to ask people what they're thinking about after the 12
30
minutes.
seconds.
Okay. One of those is that Jewish law deals not only with law, but going beyond the letter of the law, and then uses legal thinking, the same tools it uses in teasing apart complex legal issues, to talk about the supererogatory, to talk about going beyond the letter of the law. The Talmud says that the temple was destroyed because people followed the law. And the Talmud says, what do you want them to follow? He says, no, what we mean is it was destroyed because people did not go beyond the letter of the law. And Jewish law found a legal terminology to deal with issues going beyond the letter of the law. That's my only concern, that we not lose sight of that in this discussion.